Imagine walking into a room and hearing someone say, "Okay, keys, wallet, phone. Don't forget the charger." You turn around. They're alone. No phone call, no conversation. Just talking to themselves. For a long time, people assumed that talking to yourself was strange, maybe even a little worrying. But modern neuroscience suggests something very different. In fact, that quiet voice people use when they speak to themselves might be one of the brain's most powerful tools. Because the same behavior that looks odd on the outside may actually help the brain focus, solve problems, control emotions, and even improve memory. So today we're exploring the science of self-talk, the hidden cognitive system behind your inner monologue, and why speaking your thoughts out loud might actually make your brain work better. Most people think of thinking as a silent activity, but for many humans, thinking often involves words. Sometimes those words stay inside the mind as inner speech. Other times they come out as quiet whispers or full sentences spoken aloud. Psychologists call this behavior self-talk or private speech, and far from being unusual, it's extremely common. Researchers studying language and cognition have found that self-directed speech plays a critical role in memory, decision-making, attention control, and problem-solving. In other words, talking to yourself might actually be a sign that your brain is organizing information more efficiently. To understand why self-talk helps the brain, we need to go back to childhood. Developmental psychologists have long observed that young children talk to themselves constantly. A toddler building a tower might say, "Block goes here, now this one. Careful, don't fall." At first glance, it looks like random chatter. But the psychologist Lev Vygotsky proposed something revolutionary in the early 20th century. He suggested that this private speech helps children guide their own behavior. Instead of relying on instructions from parents, the child begins giving instructions to themselves. Over time, this external speech becomes internalized. The voice that once came out loud slowly transforms into inner speech. And that internal voice becomes the foundation of human reasoning. When you talk to yourself, your brain activates many of the same regions used in normal conversation. This includes Broca's area, which is involved in speech production. It also activates parts of the auditory cortex, which processes the sound of language. Even if you're speaking quietly, your brain still processes the words as meaningful signals. At the same time, regions in the prefrontal cortex become active. These areas are responsible for executive function. That includes planning, attention control, and goal-directed behavior, which means when you say something like, "Focus, finish this task first," your brain is literally giving itself instructions. Talking to yourself can also improve problem solving. When thoughts remain silent, they can move quickly and sometimes chaotically. Ideas appear, disappear, and overlap. But when thoughts become words, they slow down. Language forces the brain to organize ideas into clear sequences. This process strengthens working memory, the system that temporarily stores and manipulates information. That's why many people naturally talk themselves through difficult tasks. Mechanics troubleshooting machines, athletes planning movements, students solving complex equations. Verbalizing the process helps the brain structure the problem step by step. Here's a simple example from psychology research. In one experiment, participants were asked to search for specific objects in a cluttered environment. Some participants stayed silent. Others repeated the name of the object out loud, like saying, "Banana, banana, banana." The result was surprising. People who said the word aloud found the object faster. Why? Because speaking the word activates both language networks and visual attention systems. The brain becomes better at filtering the environment for the target object. In other words, saying the word helps your brain focus on what matters. Self-talk doesn't just help with focus, it can also change how we experience emotions. Psychologists studying emotional regulation discovered something unusual. When people speak to themselves using their own name instead of "I," their brain processes stress differently. For example, instead of saying, "I can handle this," they say, "Syra can handle this." This technique creates psychological distance. It activates regions in the brain associated with cognitive control rather than emotional reactivity. which means the brain begins treating the situation more like a problem to solve rather than a threat to panic about. This form of distanced self-talk has been shown to reduce anxiety and improve emotional regulation. Athletes have used self-talk techniques for decades. In sports psychology, self-instruction strategies are often used to improve performance. A runner might repeat, "Keep the pace steady." A basketball player might say, "Follow through." These short verbal cues guide motor planning and attention regulation. Studies show that athletes who use structured self-talk often demonstrate improvements in reaction time, focus, and endurance. The brain essentially uses language as a control system for behavior. Another surprising benefit appears in memory recall. When people repeat information aloud, the brain processes it through multiple channels. The words are spoken, they are heard, and they are processed linguistically. This creates stronger neural connections than silent reading alone. Psychologists call this the production effect. It explains why students often remember information better when they say it out loud. The brain is essentially recording the information in multiple formats at once. Humans are one of the few species with complex language systems. Language allowed early humans to share knowledge about tools, food sources, and social relationships. But the same system that allows communication with others also enables communication with ourselves. Inner speech may have evolved as a way to simulate conversations and rehearse decisions before acting. Instead of learning only through experience, humans can mentally run verbal simulations, thinking through possibilities, predicting outcomes, planning strategies. That ability gives the human brain a powerful advantage in complex environments. Most people experience some form of inner monologue, but not everyone does. Studies suggest that talking to yourself can increase task performance and concentration. Children who use private speech during learning tasks often show better problem-solving abilities. Positive self-talk can improve confidence and motivation, but negative self-talk can reinforce stress and anxiety if it becomes repetitive. And interestingly, people often talk to themselves more frequently when performing difficult or unfamiliar tasks, because the brain needs extra guidance. Talking to yourself might look unusual from the outside, but inside the brain, it's doing something incredibly useful. Self-talk helps organize thoughts. It strengthens working memory. It guides attention and behavior. It regulates emotions, and it allows the brain to simulate decisions before taking action. What seems like a simple habit is actually part of a powerful cognitive system that connects language, memory, and executive function. So the next time you catch yourself saying something like, "Okay, let's figure this out," your brain isn't being strange. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do, using language not just to communicate with others, but to communicate with itself. If you enjoy learning about the hidden psychology and neuroscience behind everyday behaviors, make sure to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might find it interesting, because sometimes the most fascinating science is hiding inside the things we do every day without even realizing it.